I refer to this as the Ken Barkauer School of Economics. And here are the rules up front before we begin to look at the budgeting. Here are the principles by which one orders one's household around finances. Don't spend more than you make. Don't buy stuff you don't need with money you don't have. In my father's way of thinking, you always paid yourself first. You always set aside savings first. I will challenge that and say that we set aside a part for God and giving and generosity first, and then we set aside for savings, and then we go on from there. My father believed you needed to build a budget. You needed to know what you have, and you needed to know what you owed, and you needed to be able to make decisions about how much more you wanted to owe based on what you knew you had. And it does affect whether or not you buy, you know, the 58,000 Land Rover or the used Volvo for 15. They're both cars, they're both transportation, they will both get you someplace. But how much you're willing to go in debt for those things, in part is based on can you really afford it? And not just because you've fallen in love with the vehicle and now you just have to have one. That Father said, you know, don't spend more than you make. Don't pay interest whenever possible. I mean, these are logical things, but avoid interest at all costs. My father got to where he even paid cash for his vehicles. He was so disciplined in his savings and his way of approaching life that unless there was something urgent that happened that required using funds that were not readily available, that one had to borrow money, other than for the mortgage, I don't remember Dad paying interest for much of anything by the time I was old enough to be aware of what was happening in the household finances. You need to plan for emergencies. You do need to have some savings. Dad also said you should never pay full price for anything. The part of financial management is in knowing that most things can be had for less than the price on the sticker, and being willing to negotiate for them and be willing to decide how much you're willing to pay and walk away from a deal if it's not right for you. Dad said you should balance the checkbook to the penny every month, and you should do it together as husband and wife. Whatever your arrangement is in your household in terms of controlling the money, that everybody ought to know what's there every month. And you ought to check against the bank, because the bank does make mistakes, and sometimes you get billed for things, particularly now with credit cards, that you didn't buy. And you don't have much recourse if you discover that 6 months later. But if every 30 days you're watching that and looking at those receipts and matching them up, you have a little more leverage then to try and get things rectified if an error has been made. Most importantly, Dad said you got to set priorities. You got to know what you want, where you're headed, which means that in the short term you may not get everything that you want, just the things that you need, but in the long term you have a better chance of getting some of the things beyond just living day to day and getting what you need. You might be able to get some of the things you really want to be able to enjoy long term in life. But again, he emphasized that you do this together. You set the priorities together and you do it together. There's some conventional wisdom and some kind of fun quotes we can share around this. Sally Poplin says, some couples go over their budgets very carefully every month, and others just go over them. I've been both of those. A budget tells us what we can afford, but it does not keep us from buying it, William Feather reminds us, and I caution you to the same. Keith Davis, a comedian, says, we didn't actually overspend our budget. The allocation simply fell short of our expenditure, making a little fun perhaps of the government there. What matters here is that we're trying to get a handle on our money. And you need to ask yourself some very important questions. What is the moral value of money for you? How does it function in reflecting your core values and how you handle it and what you do with it, how you treat it? What do you believe about your paycheck? Is it all yours? Did you earn it? Every last dime of it belongs to you? Or are there other obligations for that paycheck? Think about, and this is important especially for couples, to talk together about how was money handled in the home you grew up in? Lots of the ways in which we function around money and what we talk about and what we don't talk about and how we spend or save were imprinted on us very early by what we saw our parents doing or not doing. What are your goals? What's your understanding of enough or contentment? And Tony Campolo would ask the question, do you have affluenza? Do you just have to have more and more stuff as some way of feeding your own ego need and your own sense of self or worth? You need to know, is that a part of who you are? And what are your strategies then for coping with that? I believe very much that money, or the lack of it, reveals a great deal about our character. Who we really are, either in times of abundance or times of scarcity, it really shows up around this topic. When things are tough or things are real good, how do we behave? What choices do we make? And do those change? Whether there's affluence and abundance or whether there's scarcity and want. A few things you need to know too is that there is a game out there, folks, to separate you from your money. That is how the business world works. Buyer beware. And how well do you understand this game? What is it that makes you want to buy? Do you understand this about yourself? Are you an impulse person? We're invited to impulse every day. Do you want fries with that? Would you like a dessert? How about supersizing that? You know, when you go through the checkout line at the counter, you know, there's candy bars and gum and lifesavers and little odds and end kinds of things. The impulse to buy. Are we just, you know, we see it and suddenly, I need to have that. Are you motivated by what you think might be best for your family? You know, there's marketing for that too. You know, are you an able provider? And lots of marketing strategies are based on that understanding. Don't you want the best for your family? Or maybe it's about you. You know, don't you want the best? Don't you deserve the best? Shouldn't you drive a Cadillac? Shouldn't you have this or that item that shows, you know, that you've earned it, you deserve it? Or maybe there's some ego involved, you know. It's not just that you have a boat, but your boat's bigger than everybody else's boat, you know, to show you've arrived. You've got the right nameplate on the things that you buy, that it shows to others, you know, when they just see you drive up, that you are a person of means and substance and someone to be reckoned with. We all have these pieces in us that motivate us to buy and to shop, and marketers understand that. They also understand how to close the deal, and you have to be aware of this when you're in a situation where you're buying something that you don't have to have right at that moment. But boy, folks will try to make you make that decision. What if I told you you could drive that home today? That's my favorite one from the used car salesman. I can get that for you 12 months interest free. You know, if you buy it today, I can give you this or this deal, but not tomorrow. If you come in tomorrow, it's too late. You got to do it now. Or one of my favorites, you know, which do you see yourself in, the blue one or the green one? You know, they can keep you talking and keep moving you to the sale as they try to close that deal. Lots of studies have been done to determine how we shop and what we will choose based on color and packaging. They study our body chemistry. All those Super Bowl ads, you know, they're tracking your eye movements, your heart rate, whether or not you break a sweat, do you connect emotionally, do you laugh, do you cry? They're spending millions of dollars to figure out how to get us to buy stuff that we may not need to buy. You just need to know that that's the game. Even at the grocery store, the positioning of end caps, you know, we tend to think, you know, they put up a sign that says 3 for $1, and there's a bunch of them at the end of the aisle. We figure that's a deal, when in fact it may not be a deal at all. It actually may be a little more than the regular price, or the stuff may be dated in such a way that they need to move it, and they're trying to get rid of it. That happens at restaurants a lot. I have a cousin in the restaurant industry, and she always reminds me, she said, unless fish is the regular special that day every week, don't buy the fish on special. She said if they do it on Friday, but you come in on Monday and today they have a special on fish, she said that's left over from what they couldn't sell over the weekend. Don't buy that. She's pretty savvy about those things and just understands how that works. You know, we got a special discount. We need to move this, and we're going to entice you to buy it. Limited time offers. You know, got to do it by midnight tonight, or you can't have it, or you can't get this deal. You have the power to stop. You always have to remember that. You have the power to stop. You can learn to go more slowly. You can plan the purchases that aren't being bought simply because, you know, the refrigerator stopped working today, and yeah, you got to have one. That's one that's a little harder. You got to be a little more disciplined in that process, but you got to, end of the day, you got to have a refrigerator. But most of the other things we buy are not like that. So do some research. Learn how to walk away when you're uncomfortable with the deal or you're just not quite ready yet. You got to learn how to say no. And many of us are not good at that, particularly as clergy. We want people to like us. We want people to want to be around us. We want to please people. Unfortunately, that's our makeup a lot of times. It gets us into trouble, and it will definitely get us into trouble when we're looking at large ticket items. You need the courage to walk away. So all this boils down to, you got to have a budget. You got to know where you are. And in order to pass this course, you're going to have to turn in a personal budget. I am not interested in your personal numbers per se. I'm not going to make a lot of comments about what the status of your household is. I do want you to know that as a pastor for 30 years, I'm going to keep the information you give me in confidence, and it will only be between us. And those will be shredded at the end of the course when they've all been turned in and completed. You need a budget. So you need to begin with income. How much money comes in every month? What's the regular, we can count on this every month income? That includes not only your paycheck, but spousal support or child support, dividend or interest income you may be earning, other ways in which money may be coming into you on a regular basis. You need to know what all of those numbers are. And then you need to figure out what are the expenses. Top of the list usually is your rent or your house payment. Interestingly enough, one late house payment does more damage to your credit rating than anything else, because the credit rating agencies assume that you will spend your money first to make sure you have a roof over your head, that's everyone's priority. So make sure you're not making those house payments late. That will ding your credit rating and cause you other problems on down the road. So you have a home or an apartment that you rent, a place where you live. You need to have insurance on that property or your stuff. If you're renting, you need renter's insurance. You need to remember that you have taxes to pay. You have maintenance you have to set aside for. If you own a home in a neighborhood, you may have a homeowners association that you have dues for. As you're making your budget, list these things and understand what they are. If you have a line of credit, and you're making payments on that every month, then you need to list that as an expense. Then all of your debts, credit cards, educational loans, your car payment, your automobile insurance, your automobile maintenance. You know, you need tires, you need a tune-up, you got to get oil changes, regular gasoline. You need to have a sense of what are you spending every month on these things. Back to your home, you know, you have utilities, your gas and your electric, your water, your sewer, your trash. You have payments on those most every month. What are those? Can you list those? Do you know on average what they work out to a month? Use budget payments, by the way, that the utility companies will set up for you. Those are very helpful in leveling out your cash flow over the course of a year. How much you need to spend on food and groceries? You know, this is a great place to begin to look also for savings. Is how much am I spending at the grocery store, and what am I really buying? What comes home in that grocery cart? You got to have health insurance. You should have life insurance. If you have young children, you have child care expenses. As a professional person, you have needs for clothing and dry cleaning. There's your self-care, the doctor, the dentist, your toiletries, your cosmetics, your hair care. Dues and memberships to organizations or clubs you belong to often are monthly expenses.